Okay, kids, today we will talk about jobs, but first I would like to hear from you. What is your dream job? Anyone? Carlos, let's start with you. Yeah, probably I would be a footballer. But Carlos, you are 16 now and you never touch a soccer ball. That's none of your business, okay? Okay, after seeing my acting talent, let's move on to today's topic. The name Carlos Enrique Raposo certainly doesn't tell you much. The subject of our video today, nicknamed Carlos Kaiser, is considered the greatest scammer in the history of world football. He managed to build a career as a professional footballer without playing a single minute in over 20 years of career. But how is that possible, you're probably wondering. Carlos was, like most con artists, a very charismatic man who managed to turn any situation in his favor. Kaiser was born on 2nd of April 1963 and allegedly began his career as a footballer in the late 70s and ended it in the 90s. For almost 2 decades, the Brazilian who played as a striker did not score a goal. However, he changed about 10 clubs. This number is an approximation because even at this time it is not known what the lie is and what the truth is about his career. He is supposed to have been under contract with many clubs in Brazil, such as Botafogo, Flamengo, Fluminense or Vasco da Gama. He claims that even played in France for Gazélec Ajaccio, but he is the only one who claims that, players from that period of the team denying that they have ever seen him at the club. His strategy was simple. He befriended some of the most famous Brazilian footballers of that time, Renato Gaúcho, Romário or Edmundo. With their help, he made his entrance in the world of real football. Every time they signed a contract, they also recommended Carlos as a talented player. Thus, he signed contracts with many teams throughout his career but did not play a minute. How was this possible? Well, Carlos always pretended to be injured, changed clubs extremely often, and invoked various problems for which he could not play. To understand why he did this, we need to understand one thing. In Brazil, football is like a religion, and the big footballers are put on a pedestal and allowed almost anything. This man had almost everything a footballer needed: look, charm, grandeur, except football itself, but that was his small secret. But why is he nicknamed Kaiser? Well, the voices in his head says that others gave him this name because he looked like the German footballer Franz Beckenbauer, who was also nicknamed Kaiser. Now, should we believe the man who lied for 26 years that he is a professional footballer? Nah, it could be because he was fat and at that time existed a bottle of beer called Kaiser and that had a pretty thick base. It could be. Now let's see what was the purpose of the scam. Well, like any scam, money. Money being the key to a life full of parties, women, and many more. He had a well-defined method. He was asking for a bonus when signing the contract so that he could not necessarily need the monthly salary that he knew he would most likely not receive after a few months. After signing with the team, he invents all kinds of injuries, to the knees, to the ankles, and so on. After getting injured, he was going to recover for 2, 3, or 4 months and then start over. When he was not injured, he somehow managed to train with the team but without touching the ball. That's brilliant. He was so brilliant that he had a mobile phone at that time, which was a rarity. Almost no one had. By the way, this is how a mobile phone looked like in that period. What was he doing to convince his teammates that he was a player courted by the big teams? When there were several players next to him, let's say in the changing room, his phone started ringing. Shh, shh.
Yeah? Oh, yeah, yeah. I want a pizza with pepperoni and cheese. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay. Thanks.
After answering, he was speaking in English or French, languages that his colleagues didn't know. After the call, all he had to do was to say he was contacted by Barcelona or any team that came to mind. As I said earlier, Kaiser was friends with countless players, but not any players. Some legendary players like Bebeto, Zico, Junior or Romario. Of course, this situation was not enough for him and he took it to another level. At one point, he tried to pretend to be Renato Gaucho, a very popular striker in Brazil at the time. Carlos cut his hair like Renato, dressed like him, managed to sign autographs on his behalf, and even make some women fall in love with him. Renato Gaucho even found out at one point that Kaiser clones him, but he didn't care too much, the situation really amused him. Eventually, they become very good friends and still are. Our main character claims that after playing for several clubs in Brazil, he reoriented to European football and played for Gazélec Ajaccio from France for 8 years. His friend Fabio Barros, who played for Ajaccio at the time, confirmed this story, but in recent years he has changed his mind and said that the truth is that Carlos never arrived in France. Michel Mancini was sporting director of Gazélec from 1976 to 1993, and while he remembers Barros, he has no recollection of the Kaiser. After this alleged adventure in France, our hero returned to Brazil, stating that he had become an idol of the Ajaccio team. Thus, he obtained a new contract with another Brazilian team, Bangu. Castor de Andrade was president of this team, a man who at that time was the most dangerous man in Brazil. To understand what the players of this team were going through, I will give you two examples. From time to time, the players were forced to kiss his hand, or he would shoot at the player's feet just for fun. Yep. And we complain that the company we work for doesn't have our favorite coffee. Of course, Kaiser managed to somehow get under the president's skin and for a long time fool him with the same scheme in which he pretended to be injured. After a while, during a match, Castor ordered the coach to put him on the field. Like a real crook, Carlos quickly thought about what to do to not enter the field and found a solution. While he was warming up, he saw the fans of the opposing team in the stands and a brilliant idea came to him. He jumps in the stands and starts fighting with them. His plan worked perfectly and he received a red card before entering the field. When the president sees all this, he goes to the changing room after him to end his charlatan career. Again, the acting talent of our man Kaiser enters the scene and tells the president that the supporters were chanting against him, against President Carlos, and that he cannot allow that because he considers him a father. After this incident, what do you think happened? Do you think he was fired from the team or worse? Of course not, he received a contract extension because he defended his president. Incredible. After some time from this incident, he arrives at a club that was under the leadership of another character who dealt with illegalities in Brazil. He signs with Botafogo, which was led by Emil Pinheiro. What's interesting is that he transferred Kaiser for other needs than football. At that time, Pinheiro was very old, but he still wanted to enjoy the pleasures of life. Because Viagra was not invented, he underwent the most modern operation of its time and had, how should I say, a kind of bionic cucumber. Thus, Kaiser behaved like a real PIMP and presented some girls to the president with whom he could put his new toy into operation. For this, it is assumed that Kaiser spent no less than 5 years at Botafogo. He not only helped President Pinheiro but also the players or employees of the team, organizing all kinds of orgies and parties. He claims that until the end of his football career, he signed with a few more teams, but I will not go into details. However, if you want to see more about this incredible story, I recommend the movie or the book with the same name, Kaiser, the greatest footballer never to play football. You should have links in the description box with both of them. Last, I would like to answer a question that you may be asking. How in the hell the football teams didn't find out that he wasn't a real football player? Well, this was based on the fact that the teams he signed with will not disclose that he was a charlatan in order not to be mocked by the press and to succeed in selling him and getting rid of him. Apparently, this scheme worked just fine. That's it. The advice of the episode would be to put on your socks before putting on your sneakers, never the other way around.